Hello friends, welcome back, or if you are brand new, welcome. My name is Emily. I'm so happy to have you here. I make videos about beauty and about books. Today we're going to be talking about some of my all-time favorite authors. So we're going to go ahead and get right into it.
Honey?
Alright, so first up is Madeleine L'Engle. I got into her books when I was in middle school, and you probably know her as the author of A Wrinkle in Time, but she has written so many books over the course of her life. And one of my favorite things about her books is, well, I'm going to list two favorite things about her books. The first one is that so many of them are genre bending. They dabble in fantasy and science fiction. Some of them are even kind of political intrigue or just realistic fiction, contemporary. It's such a huge mix, and I absolutely love them. And I was so thankful that my middle school library, when I was really into her, had a huge section of her books. They even had some of her oldest ones, which are out of print and have been for a long time. So it was really cool to be able to read those books. Another favorite thing about her books is that they interweave together so much. At the beginning of a lot of them, there's kind of like a family tree chart that shows how different characters are related and when they cross over into one another's stories. So there are the Wrinkle in Time books, which are much more science fiction fantasy, and then there's the Austen's books, which are a lot more realistic, contemporary. And they interweave, and their families meet, and they have crossover, and there's characters who know each of them. And once you read a few of her books, you start to notice people who go between, and it's amazing, and I highly recommend anything by her. Next up is Gillian Flynn, and she is the author of Gone Girl, but she's also written Sharp Objects, which is my favorite of her books, Dark Places, and then a little short story called The Grown Up. I've read all of her books, and I really hope she comes out with another one. She is so good at writing these dark, kind of twisted, complicated main characters where you might read the book and kind of hate everyone in it, but still really enjoy the book. She's also great at those like thriller plot twists, but I think her strong suit is really those complicated characters. Next up is another thriller author, Riley Sager. So I have read all of his books as well, and I absolutely love them. He is so good at writing these books with twists at the very end that don't feel like, why did you put a twist there? Like, we didn't need that, you know? It's like, they're like, oh yeah, they're good twists, even when they're not until the very last second. Because I feel like a lot of the times those are like 11th hour twists are like, well, you just threw that in to have a twist. But I feel like his books, they're always really unexpected, but also make sense at the same time. And his most recent book, Home Before Dark, is more in the horror genre, and I absolutely loved it. It was so good. So I cannot wait to read what he comes out with next. I know it's going to be a while because he just came out with a book, but I cannot wait. Another author I'm excited for him to come out with a new book is SYLVAIN NEUVEL. I think I'm pronouncing his name correctly. He is the author of the Themis Files, which are one of my favorite sci-fi series ever. It's about find these giant robots that are buried underground, and it has to do with aliens and like space travel, and it's amazing. They're told, part of why I love them so much is that they are told through journal entries and conversations and interviews, and I listen to them as audiobooks and they're narrated with a full cast, so it makes for an amazing audiobook, but I would absolutely love it as a print book series as well. I gave my dad the first book for Christmas, and he flew through the series. Alright, the next three are favorite authors from my childhood who I still enjoy their books as an adult, but they write books for kids. Madeleine L'Engle does as well, but hers are a little more, you know, like she's genre bending, she's also like age target bending as well. So the next author is Margaret Peterson Haddix. So looking back on my reading career, Margaret Peterson Haddix is really the author who got me into thrillers without me even realizing it. So now as an adult, those are the books that I gravitate towards all the time, but I didn't really realize that as a kid, I was obsessed with thrillers. They just weren't called that. But Margaret Peterson Haddix writes amazing thrillers for kids, like middle grade thrillers, and I love all of her books. Of course, you know, going into them, you know that they're written for a middle grade audience, so they might not be like the same level of plot twistiness, but some of them totally blew my mind. And I read, what did I read? I read Among the Hidden out loud to my class, and that one had them on the edge of their seats. Sometimes that was the only time that they would be fully paying attention, all of them, but man, they were so excited by that book, and I really think Margaret Peterson Haddix's books are fantastic. The next one is GAIL Carson Levine. So I haven't read any of her books in a while, but she is an author who will always have a special place in my heart and definitely always be one of my favorites. You probably read Ella Enchanted, but she's written so many wonderful books. I love that so many of them are twists on fairy tales. Like Ella Enchanted is kind of a twist on Cinderella, and I loved these books as a kid, and I still remember how mad I was when the Ella Enchanted movie came out and it wasn't anything like the book. I felt so betrayed, but her books are amazing. My favorite one is The Two Princesses of Bamar. It is fantastic, and I know there's a sequel that she came out years later, so I think I have that on my Kindle, and I definitely need to read it soon. But man, her books are fantastic, and if you want to be transported into a magical world with princesses and elves and dwarves and other creatures, like, read her books. Alright, and the last one of my favorite authors is Cornelia Funke. I think I'm pronouncing her last name correctly. She is German, but man, her books are so good. That was another author that I was really obsessed with as a kid. I read Harry Potter. I feel like this happens to a lot of people. I read Harry Potter and loved it. And I thought that I loved fantasy books. But it turns out I mostly just loved Harry Potter, but I was reading every fantasy book I could find. So that led me to Cornelia Funke's books, and luckily I loved her books as well. So I've since discovered that it's not the fantasy genre that I like, it's, you know, certain aspects of it. I mean, fantasy books are great, but it's not, I wasn't like as big of a fantasy person as I thought I was as a kid. But her books, you might have read Inkheart, that series, or one of my other favorites is The Thief Lord, but her books are just so, I think part of it is that they are all set in Europe, and as a kid, like, I've been to Europe one time, and that was when I was in high school, so as a kid, Europe was this like magical other world to me, and her books are mixed in fantasy. Even The Thief Lord is more, I feel like it's almost magical realism, it's not entirely fantasy, it's a little more adventure, but it takes place in the city of Venice, which is such a magical setting, even if there was no actual magic, you know what I mean? So her books are just so wonderfully immersive, and they're just so like, I'm having trouble describing it, but I feel like they're so juicy, like you just want more, and you just feel like you're in that world, and it feels like a different world, even when it is the same world. I think that probably makes no sense at all, but highly recommend her books. Alright, so I also have a couple of authors that I wanted to mention as honorable mentions, and there's a couple reasons why each of these authors didn't fit on my main list, but I'll go over that with each one. So the first honorable mention is T. Kingfisher. So the reason she is on the honorable mentions list is that I've only read one of her books. So I read The Twisted Ones, I listened to it as an audiobook, and that book was so creepy, it was scary, it was amazing, and it really surprised me. It was just one that I went to the what's available now section of my Libby app from my library, and I was like, oh, that sounds interesting, and I listened to it, and I gave it 5 stars, and I've already pre-ordered her next book. So she's an honorable mention just because, like, we're not best friends yet, right? Like, I've read one of her books and loved it, but you know, we're still on like a trial basis, but she definitely has the potential to become an absolute favorite author. Another honorable mention is Liane Moriarty. I've read Big Little Lies and 9 Perfect Strangers from her, and I really enjoyed both of them. The reason she's an honorable mention is because I have a bunch more of her books that I haven't read yet, and her books are just different than what I normally go for. At least based on the 2 that I've read, they're very much more character driven with some like hints of excitement in the plot, but I don't normally really go for character driven stories, but I really enjoyed her books. So I'm not 100% sure that I will love everything of hers, but I did really love the 2 that I read. The next honorable mention is Ruth Ware, and she's an honorable mention because, again, I've read 2 of her books. I read The Turn of the Key and I read The Woman in Cabin 10, and I really liked them, but I didn't love either of them, but I want to read more from her. So I feel like I've got like a weird vibe with her books where I really enjoyed reading them. Like, I think I read The Woman in Cabin 10 in like one day, but I didn't end up loving it. I just liked it. So I don't know. I'm excited to read more from her, and I definitely think that I will, but I'm not sure why I feel that way about her books, where they're just like good, not great, but I really want to read more of them. And I think it's because of the atmospheres that she creates when she writes, is that it's very exciting and immersive, and like The Turn of the Key was so creepy. I listened to that on audiobook, but it was like, when I listen to an audiobook, a lot of the times I'll be going for a walk, and I was like constantly looking over my shoulder to make sure like no creepy person was behind me. Like, and I think just her writing is so good that even if I don't love the plot or love the ending of the book, I'm like excited to read more from her. My next honorable mention is FANNIE FLAGG. So she is another author I discovered through the Libby What's Available section of my library. So she is an honorable mention because her books are not the books that I would necessarily go for. I don't think I've rated any of them I've definitely not rated any of them 5 stars. They might not have even gotten 4 stars from me, but her books are so comforting. She writes just these funny, sweet characters, these nice, heartwarming stories, sometimes kind of cheesy, but I like her books because I know that when I pick up a FANNIE FLAGG book, well, I like the audiobooks. She narrates all her own audiobooks as well, so that's, I think, really fun. Because she reads them exactly how she wants them to be read, which I think is great. But I know that when I pick up one of her books, I'm gonna feel like just cozy and happy inside. So she's definitely an honorable mention favorite author. Not my favorite type of book, but I know what I'm getting, and I know I'm gonna enjoy it. And my last honorable mention is Samantha March. So she is also a beauty YouTuber, and she's got a podcast, and she is a self-published author. So she has written a ton of books. I've read quite a few of them, and kind of similar to FANNIE FLAGG, although they're very different types of books. They're not what I would necessarily go for normally, but when I pick it up, I know I'm gonna enjoy it. Even if it's not a great book necessarily, I know I'm gonna have fun, I'm gonna like it, and I'm gonna want to read the next one. So I really love The Six series, and I know that she posted on her Instagram story the other day that she's writing the next one, and I'm really excited about it. But her books are just, if you want some, you know, kind of mindless, I don't want to say mindless because that sounds bad, but you know, you just want to open a book and read about people, girlfriends hanging out, having wine nights, having boy problems. You want to read a book like that. Her books hit that, and they're amazing. And she dabbles in like deeper issues with it as well, which I think is really fun. So there you go, that was my list of my absolute favorite authors and some honorable mentions. And please, please, please leave me a comment down below. Who are your absolute favorite authors? Who do you want to pick up new releases from every single time? Who are authors that you loved as a kid? I would love more amazing authors to check out, but please leave a comment down below. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. As always, everything I'm wearing, this crazy eye look, will be linked in the description box down below. And I'll figure out a way to link authors down below. I'll either link my favorite book from them, or I'll link, I think I'll link my favorite book from each of these authors. So yeah, that will be down below. And please, if you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on that bell notification icon before you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye.